back to winning ways for Newcastle United on Saturday as they beat Southampton 3-1 at St Mary's. In this episode of the NUFC Monday Show, I'm going to be looking back at that game and also explaining why, in the last week of the window, Newcastle may not go into the loan market. Let's get into it. Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Welcome back to another NUFC Monday Show. Before we get going, please, as always, continue to like, share and subscribe to the videos and the channel. Help me grow to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the season. That's the target. I'm on my way. Really appreciating all the support this month, particularly with the NUFC shows being back, but also generally. It's growing really well. I'm really happy with how it's going, and thanks so much. That's all thanks to you, so thanks so much for that. But we'll get straight into it by looking back at Newcastle's win at Southampton on Saturday, and it was a really sort of important game for Newcastle. Coming in off the back of that defeat to Bournemouth at St James's Park last week, they needed to get back to winning ways against a team that's won once all season, 6 points on the board, one of statistically the worst Premier League sides ever, even at this stage, and there was no real excuses. They went 1-0 behind, which was a little bit concerning to Jan Bednarek's header. Mistake by Dan Burn in the build-up to that. Didn't mark his man properly. But Newcastle it reminded me of the Tottenham game. They regained their composure, they regained their control, they answered questions and problem solved on the pitch, which I think is a real credit to Eddie Howe and a real credit to this team, because that was what they were doing earlier in the season, and the fact that they can do that now shows that this team is growing and this team is evolving and hitting the stride at maybe the right time to aim for that Champions League spot. There's such an important few weeks coming up with this cup semi-final, hopefully a cup final after that if they win that, and then obviously the Champions League race beyond that as well. So they needed to sort of really answer that question. It was Alexander Isak again with a quick brace that turned the game around, and then Sandro Tonali in the second half with the winning goal or the clinching goal, if you like. There was an offside against Matías Fernandes, which would have made it a little bit nervous, but VAR intervened. For me, that Tonali goal is the best goal of the season, not because it's the most emphatic. It's not Isak against Liverpool, or for example, there have been better goals aesthetically, I think maybe, but for me it was just the connection between Tonali, Isak and Gordon, the fact that they just swept through Southampton. It was one of those moments where you think that is just the quality that Newcastle have on the pitch, just stepped up at the right moment, and two world-class players in Tonali and Isak have really taken the game by the scruff of the neck for the team this weekend. And in that moment you could just see it. And I've spoken to different players over the years to ask what it is about these players when you come up against world-class players. What is it about them that makes them world-class? Is it the extra quality on the pass? Is it a certain sound when they kick the ball? That sort of thing. What exactly is it? How can you describe it? But I think we saw it there. I think Tonali stepping up, having the bravery to win that header first of all, and then just keep on going. There's a little flick around the corner from Isak, and then the sweep forward from Gordon to make it happen. Such a piece of quality that shows exactly what this Newcastle team is about, the connection that those three players have. And you've got to put Bruno and even Jacob Murphy in that at the moment as well. Not that Jacob Murphy is world class, but you know what I'm trying to say. And then from that moment, really, Newcastle weren't in trouble. Yes, they had that offside goal, but really they felt like the game was done from that moment. And Tonali again was absolutely superb. And it's one of those, lots of people talking about Alexander Isak. There was a moment with Sky Sports and Mark McAdam that went viral because he mentioned Arsenal. I think Newcastle fans need to just shut that out, because Isak, again, we'll get into his contract situation in a minute, but he's just so happy at the club. He's performing really well. He's doing everything he needs to do to break records. He's now officially Newcastle's second top Premier League goal scorer with 48 goals, overtaking Callum Wilson, thanks to that brace. The sky's the limit for him. That's what Newcastle fans need to focus on, enjoying what he's doing, because it doesn't feel like it's coming to an end anytime soon. He is part of the team that is growing and developing, and that's a real sort of lesson for recruitment, but also what's important to Newcastle. What they can't lose is that ability to have that togetherness and that combination of quality and teamwork and team ethic. And I think Isak really embodies that, Tonali embodies that, and Bruno as well, and Gordon and Murphy. That top end of the pitch is so effective at the moment, and it proved again after a blip last week. They came back and really made their statement. They're into fifth. They're still very much in that race. It could be fifth, could be enough for the Champions League, but I wouldn't rule out fourth. Newcastle need to, I think, improve on their overall level of performance in the next few weeks. Yes, they've won games against Wolves and on Saturday against Southampton, but when they face Fulham, who are a good side, but more pertinently Forest, Liverpool, Manchester City, they need to be better than they have been in those few weeks. There's been some defensive errors, maybe complacency at times, and I think Newcastle, for me, they played in second or third gear on Saturday and were saved by those moments by Tonali and Isak, who sort of took the game away from Southampton. I think they need more of what they showed against Ipswich and Leicester if they're going to go and really continue this run beyond these sort of easier fixtures, if you like, on paper. When the fixtures get tougher, they need to get more consistent with their performance across the board, because that's what will make the difference in those games. The other point, as I said, I wanted to speak about was Alexander Isak's contract. There's been a report by Luke Edwards in the Telegraph this weekend that Newcastle are going to reopen talks with him in the summer about a new deal. They don't want to sell him at any price. Obviously, the Arsenal link, again, from Mark McAdam was disappointing. I understand that, but this is a really good story because it really embodies the fact that Newcastle feel confident. They know what they have in Alexander Isak, and they do feel like they need to reward him. Obviously, earlier in the season when the contract talks dissipated a little bit, I think you've got to remember that he is already Newcastle's sort of in the top three earners, and he's the only player who came in on those wages. He's got a long-term deal. At the time, Newcastle was struggling, so maybe his camp weren't as open to signing that new deal. If there's a sense of progress can be made at St James's Park, and in the last few weeks, thanks to Isak's goals, that really does feel like the case. So I think that this is a positive story, but I also think it's very realistic that contract talks will reopen. We've got to be honest here and say that Isak will only stay at Newcastle when there's a sense of something growing, especially the fact that he is the reason, or one of the main reasons, why Newcastle are back on form. He'll want to be rewarded for that, and rightly so. So I think that the contract talks reopening in the summer is a good moment for Newcastle. I think this summer could be a really exciting one, but if Newcastle can get a contract sorted for Isak that protects his value even further, then it gives them strength to keep him for next season and maybe the season or two after that. But if it ever comes to the stage where he does leave, then they'll be in a strong position to profit from it and hopefully build on that themselves later. But this is a really big moment for Newcastle, because if they can keep Isak, it really is a statement of intent to both him but also to other teams, to rivals. It means that this narrative about Arsenal just having the entitlement to come and take Isak away from Newcastle simply goes away. They become a real player at the table if he signs a new contract, and I think that this is a real positive that can really take the team to the next level. A couple of other things just to talk about quickly is Miguel Almiron looks set to move this week to Atlanta United, and that's why I think I'm going to talk more about him in the Thursday show, talk about his career and his legacy at Newcastle, what I think he deserves in terms of how he'll be remembered. Also, it looks like there'll be no other outgoings. The Lloyd Kelly situation's gone quiet. Martin Dubravka doesn't look like he's going to go either. So Miguel Almiron might go, but it looks like nothing else will happen. And that answers the next question. Obviously, the rumours have dried up because it looks set like Newcastle aren't going to enter the market this month, and a lot of people have questioned why they don't do loans. Eddie Howe has questioned himself why, whether they'll go into the loan market, and I've been asked again once or twice on social media why Newcastle aren't looking at the loan market, loan to buy, the sort of thing that they did for Lewis Hall. And the truth is that Newcastle are only interested in signing players who will improve the team. Eddie Howe said as much in the summer. I have my thoughts on what that means, and I think that maybe they should loosen the term. I think they need to look a bit further afield for reinforcements in a PSR world, but they need quality additions if they're going to impact the first team, and I think first team additions is really what they need. So that means that the loan market is kind of off limits, because teams aren't interested, even with an obligation to buy, of loaning their players out mid-season anyone who's going to improve Newcastle is going to cost a lot of money, and it'll happen in the summer when teams can react a little bit better, especially at this late stage of the window when the quality just isn't there. And Eddie Howe himself said that the loan market costs as well, so it's not as like it isn't as straightforward as maybe people like to think. Having said that, it was mentioned by Fabrizio Romano overnight that Evan Ferguson may be let out on loan by Brighton this week, and Liga and clubs and Bundesliga clubs and Premier League clubs had registered an interest. I think this would be one to watch if Newcastle could maybe strike that deal, because obviously he's got quality. He's had a difficult time under Fabian Herzler this season, but he's obviously got quality. Newcastle fans know that more than anyone because he's got a hat-trick against them last season. He's physical, he's very good in the air, he's very good on the ball, with the ball at his feet. He just lacks confidence at the moment. I think there'd be an opportunity to find the player who they could regain confidence with. Is he going to want to come and sit on the bench for another club? That's why I think this move away from Brighton is happening. So I think it's unlikely that Evan Ferguson would join Newcastle, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're very much in the race. There is a gap in the squad for someone like Evan Ferguson, who's got a bit more experience and a bit more proven Premier League quality than Will Asula, but is ready to go and fit to step into Callum Wilson's shoes while he continues to recover from another injury. So I think Newcastle might look at this if it becomes available, but with the amount of competition, as I've mentioned last week about Ryan Shirky and other players, when competition is there, Newcastle tend to struggle and tend to step away. Would Brighton want to do a deal with a rival like Newcastle, and also would Evan Ferguson want to come and sit on the bench effectively, which he would be doing at the start when he's already doing that at Brighton? I think he might go abroad, it'd be my bet, but his career has stunted a little bit over the last few weeks, but the quality is there. I've spoken to a lot of people around Evan Ferguson. He's a superb player and by all accounts a very good lad, so he would be an interesting addition if it happened in the last week, but I wouldn't hold my breath, because as I said earlier, the loan market has to be right for Newcastle, and the player has to come in and make an impact. And those players, unlike Lewis Hall, who Chelsea were open to selling because of PSR, there was a reason to benefit for Chelsea in the long term. That's why they were open to doing that deal. But if you look at a player like a Kubo, for example, in January, there's no way you're going to get him out of Real Sociedad with a loan to buy obligation. But if Evan Ferguson is available for loan this month, I think Newcastle United should definitely register their interest and see where it goes, because there could be an opportunity to strike a very good, interesting deal between now and the end of the season. Thanks so much for joining me. Like, share and subscribe, and I'll be back on Thursday to discuss Miguel Almiron and also look ahead to the game against Fulham. Thanks so much, and I'll see you then.